The Souls series consists of 7 games spanning over a decade of creation. These games are as follows: Demon's Souls, which was the firstborn child to the family and would naturally introduce many of the fundamental principles that we know and love about the Souls-like genre today. Dark Souls 1, which blew up when it came out and became most commonly known for its harsh and unforgiving style of difficulty. Dark Souls 2, which ended up garnering a different feel and reception from the community and became kind of a black sheep to the series. Bloodborne, which presented a gothic H.P. Lovecraft style of world and shifted the series forward from slow and methodical into a fast-paced, frenzied playstyle. Dark Souls 3, which rounded off the Dark Souls trilogy in excellent fashion and became widely loved for its amazing gameplay and boss roster. Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice, which strayed the most from the Souls-esque genre and went for a majorly different design when it came to its combat system. And the most recent of the bunch, Elden Ring, the most successful and welcoming game to new players and pushed the series forward into the eyes of many newcomers. In today's video, however, I'll be discussing Dark Souls 1, mainly my experiences with it and why I believe it's still a phenomenal piece of gaming, one that's praises should always be sung no matter how far into the future we get. I'm currently replaying the series one game at a time, and I made a video on Demon's Souls a few weeks ago, so I'd like to make one for each of the games, as I honestly just love talking about how fucking brilliant each entry is. It's been over 12 years since this game was released into the world, which naturally means that everything about it has already been talked about to death, and I'll be honest and I say I have nothing new to add to the discussion. I just wanted to create this video to express my love for this fantastic. So let's jump into things, shall we? When you listen and discuss about what the greatest strength of Dark Souls 1 is, a majority of us will agree that the world and its design are unequivocally top notch. What we're treated to is a game with areas that are seamlessly interconnected and unfathomably engaging. Unlike many other games that rely on separate, disconnected levels or zones, Dark Souls 1 crafts a cohesive and continuous realm known as Lordran. The world is a labyrinthine tapestry, intricately woven with shortcuts, secret passages and connecting pathways. This design choice not only immersed me in a believable and immersive environment, but also reinforced the sense of discovery and accomplishment as I continued on with the game. I'd like to touch on the fast travel of the game, well, more so the lack of it throughout the first half of its run and how bloody brilliant of a design choice this was for the game's overall success. So I'll be completely honest, on about my first quarter of my initial playthrough, I wasn't a very big fan of the no fast travel mechanic. Coming straight after Elden Ring, where you could fast travel about every 5 inches to the right, and now having to hike everywhere on foot felt like an incredibly nightmarish chore. I'll never forget the time when I was in Anor Londo getting my ass beat by those Silver Knights so badly, but was so reluctant to travel all the way back to Andre to upgrade my weapon. I eventually gave in as I needed that damage boost, so I trekked from the second bonfire past the infamous Anor Londo archers all the way to the start where those bat-winged demons awaited. I ran through Sen's fortress and made it all the way back to Andre. I upgraded my damn weapon and spent over an hour trying to get back to the bonfire thanks to these fuckers, only to progress further on and find the giant blacksmith not even 5 minutes later. I could only laugh at the situation, but after beating ONS and finally unlocking the ability to fast travel, that sense of dread, having to traverse through entire levels, disappeared. I still debate with myself whether the game would have been better off without it, as going through the world in the first half and needing to plan ahead and play with more than your life on the line created an overpowering intensity that controlled the way you went throughout the game. It also made finding shortcuts a lot more rewarding. Discovering whole new routes back to Firelink Shrine is an absolutely mind-blowing experience on your first time round. Even the world itself felt more real. Travelling through the blades of grass, hearing your footsteps as you run past the enemies, as opposed to just teleporting from area to area, certainly felt like more than just a game. It felt like a true adventure. These things I mentioned definitely felt impacted after unlocking the ability to fast travel, but thinking about climbing my way back through the catacombs or upwards from Ash Lake make me feel thankful we don't have to do that. So I'm not sure, what do you guys think about the impact of fast travelling in this game? Let me know in the comments. Another thing to mention is the beauty of hidden areas that the game contains. There are completely new and separate levels that can easily be missed during your first playthrough if you play the game without searching for any help using the internet. Places like the Great Hollow, Ash Lake and the painted world of Ariamas have a uniquely fascinating element to them. They are a marvel to stumble upon for the first time because of the reason that they're so easily missable, so it's incredibly rewarding to discover them. The developers didn't have to go out of their way to create these areas, but them doing so shows the love and compassion that went into this title. They even trusted the player base to find these areas on their own, through the uses of item descriptions and detailed exploration. I can't state enough how effective these things are at making the world seem more alive and keeping the player invested in that world. The interconnectedness of Lordran not only serves its traditional gameplay, but also contributes to the overall narrative. The world tells a story through its architecture and placement of landmarks, from the towering spires of Anor Londo to the chaotic and dilapidated bridges of Upper Blighttown. Each area has a distinct feeling and lore that contributes to the overall atmosphere that the game is presenting to us. A sense of curiosity was fostered as I walked into a new zone and was communicated with by the environment itself, expressing the game's rich history on a deeper level. It's crazy and downright ridiculous to think about how well this game nailed the sense of verticality and multi-layered complexity. Most players will traverse through the Undead Berg, descend into Lower Undead Berg, reach the depths below only to discover that the world delves even further below with the horrors of Blighttown. This layered approach to level design creates a three-dimensional world that feels deeply realistic and authentic. It compels players to explore every nook and cranny, rewarding them with hidden treasures, shortcuts, and sometimes new perspectives on familiar locations. I admire this aspect about the game so much because it emphasizes creativity massively. On my first playthrough, as I dived deeper and deeper until I got to the depths, I just had to stop and think for a second about how low in the world we've delved. Weirdly enough, it was when I got to the notorious Blighttown that I slowly started to realize how special this design truly was. When I got to the end of my most recent playthrough, I thought, why not try this, and I went to the top of the Duke's archives and I just sprinted all the way, without fast travelling, to the arena that inhabited the Bed of Chaos, the lowest point in the world. Maybe you could argue Ash Lake is of equal depth in the geographical map, but I went with the Bed of Chaos' arena. This took over 15 minutes, and at the time it was such an eye-opening trip that put into perspective how insanely different the game would have been without fast travelling after ONS. The game's non-linear structure is another hallmark of the world's design. Dark Souls allows players with the freedom to choose their own path, creating a sense of agency and personalization. While the game establishes a recommended order for certain areas, it doesn't really enforce a rigid sequence. At the start of Fire Links, if you really wanted to, you could go and explore New Londo ruins or the catacombs, but you'll have a much harder time with those areas as opposed to going straight to the Undead Berg. This freedom encourages exploration and experimentation, allowing players to tackle challenges in their preferred order. The interconnected world supports this non-linearity, ensuring a seamless transition between different regions. This remains especially true if you choose to play the game with the Master Key as your starting gift, as it generally allows for entire areas to be skipped. The level of challenge presented by Dark Souls is intricately tied to its world design. Every encounter is purposefully placed, creating a balance between risk and reward. The interconnectivity of the world means that players may stumble upon formidable foes early on in the game, providing an initial challenge but also the potential for exceptional rewards. Like say the Black Knights for example, you'll have a tough time dealing with them early on, but if you do kill them, you get some good rewards. This design philosophy nurtures a sense of mastery, as overcoming difficult obstacles feels incredibly rewarding and becomes a testament to the player's skill and perseverance. Another big foundation of DS1's world design is environmental storytelling. Abandoned structures, cryptic messages, and the corpses of fallen adventurers tell tales of the world's decline. The minimalist approach to traditional narrative methods allows for players to piece together the lore themselves, developing a deep sense of engagement. It repays the players that take a deeper look into the game with the tragic yet beautiful depth of its characters and history. This subtly invites speculation and discussion within the gaming community, contributing to the game's longevity and cultural impact. The art direction in Dark Souls 1 is yet another aspect that doesn't go unnoticed. The game's desolate and melancholic aesthetic, combined with meticulous attention to detail, creates an atmospheric experience that is both haunting and striking at the same time. From the sun-drenched brilliance of Anor Londo to the oppressive darkness of the Tomb of the Giants, each area evokes a distinct mood that enhances the overall storytelling and gameplay experience. Dark Souls 1's world design is a masterpiece that seamlessly integrates gameplay, narrative, and atmosphere. The interconnectedness of Lordran, the non-linear structure, the environmental storytelling, the challenging encounters and the captivating art direction all contribute to an immersive experience that has set a standard for video game world design. Dark Souls 1 stands as a shining example of how meticulous attention to detail coupled with a deep understanding of the player's psychology can elevate a game from being merely entertaining to a timeless work of art. However, as impressive and mesmerizing of a world that Dark Souls is, it's not the only thing that's brilliant about it. I'm sure most of you are aware of the reputation that the Souls series has garnered over the years. These games are known first and foremost for their excruciating difficulty. Even I steered clear from FromSoft's beloved catalogue out of total intimidation of getting my head stomped over and over and over again. It didn't sound like my idea of fun. However, in 2021, when I started playing a lot more games in general, I was surfing online trying to see what to play next, and I'd search up a list of the top 100 games or something similar just to see which ones piqued my interest. I saw the Dark Souls trilogy and Bloodborne rank extremely highly, which made me think about viewing the game with an open mind and looking at the quality of the games instead of the difficulty. Shortly after, I picked up a copy of Bloodborne, and yep, it wasn't as hard as I thought. It wasn't that excruciating difficulty that I was so terrified of for many years. My point being that in my opinion, when you actually do give these games a shot, the quality far outweighs the difficulty that they pose. But a contributing factor to both its quality and its difficulty is without a doubt its roster of boss fights. Bosses are usually used as a cornerstone to cap off an area with, though this isn't always the case. From the gargantuan and imposing to the agile and cunning, the bosses in Dark Souls 1 are a testament to the game's meticulous craftsmanship. Dark Souls 1's boss battles are characterized by a remarkable diversity in design. Each boss poses a unique visual appearance, a distinctive moveset, and a specific lore that separates them from one another, whilst also adding depth to the overall narrative and enriching the experience in general. From the infamous duo of Ornstein and Smough to the ethereal and enigmatic Four Kings, every encounter feels like a carefully crafted piece of the game's puzzle. This diversity prevents from the boss battles becoming repetitive and ensures that each confrontation offers a fresh and exciting challenge. With the variety on offer, I'll say this, even though some of the bosses are stinkers, I'm not gonna lie, then they're far from dull in my opinion. I never felt particularly bored. The difficulty curve in Dark Souls 1 is finely tuned, and the bosses play a pivotal role in the balancing act. From the relatively straightforward Asylum Demon that serves as an initial test of the player's combat skills to the formidable Manus, Father of the Abyss, the final boss of the DLC that demands mastery of the game's mechanics. The progression in difficulty is gradual, but you'll definitely notice it as you go along. This carefully calibrated difficulty curve ensures that players are consistently challenged but never overwhelmed, creating a satisfying sense of accomplishment with each conquered foe, as it reassures the player that their skills are indeed growing as the game progresses. The emphasis on player skill and strategy is a defining feature of the game's boss design. Unlike some games that implement scripted sequences or quick-time events, the bosses in this game demand a deep understanding of combat mechanics as well as precise timings that need to be adapted to on the fly. Each boss has a distinct set of attacks and patterns, requiring players to study and learn their movesets to achieve victory. This focus on skill-based gameplay feels very rewarding, as being able to defeat these immeasurable monsters with terrifying attacks gives you a feeling similar to an underdog defeating the favourite in any type of sports. The sense of overcoming odds is one that's satisfying to a point where it feels almost addictive when you enter a new boss, only to get smacked around, but you keep coming back, searching for that feeling of victory. I'd be doing a disservice to this game if I spoke about its bosses, but failed to mention the standout feature that is tail cutting and tail cutting weapons. If I'm not mistaken, this is an aspect that is unique to Dark Souls 1 in particular, not showing up in Demon Souls or any of the titles in the franchise afterwards. It's a shame as well because it's a genius mechanic that adds that extra depth to those fights that make use of it. Take the Bell Gargoyles or the Gaping Dragon for example. Quite a bit of the battle involves the usage of their tails, which creates an annoying nuisance that you need to be extra aware of for the duration of the fight. However, if you cleverly whack at the tail a few times, it breaks and it disappears, like taking away a tomato from a burger. It makes the encounter a great deal more manageable and enjoyable. You're also given a weapon for your efforts, which incentivizes you to do it more often with the other bosses that have a tail. A truly excellent feature that I hope they implement into their next title in some way, shape or form. This game's boss roster and the bosses aren't mere combat encounters, they're living pieces of the game's lore. The narrative significance of each boss is seamlessly woven into the fabric of the game, whether it's the tragic tale of Artorias the Abysswalker or the haunting presence of Gravelord Nito. Each boss contributes to the overarching story and general atmosphere, providing players with a sense of purpose and investment in their journey. The lore is often cryptic and open to interpretation, fostering a sense of mystery and intrigue that's captivated the community for many, many years now. They also excel at evoking a wide range of emotions from the player, from the adrenaline pumping intensity of battling the terrifying and ferocious gargoyles for the first time, to the somber and contemplative atmosphere of the encounter with Gwyn, Lord of Cinder. It's palpable the emotional impact that these battles give. I'll tell you a story. After my first playthrough, whilst watching lore videos on YouTube, I watched the story of Knight Artorias and his great grey wolf Sif. And man, that shit really made me feel something. The tragedy and camaraderie the experience captivated me. Even the little details like Sif limping when you get him close to zero in his fight, making me hesitate and waver in defeating him on subsequent playthroughs. And don't even get me started on that alternative cutscene that plays if you complete the DLC before fighting Sif. FromSoft, why did you do this to us? The emotional investment in these encounters adds depth to the overall gaming experience, making the journey through Lordran a truly memorable and defining episode throughout my history of gaming. This type of attached resonance that Dark Souls 1 makes the player feel is achieved through the combination of the atmospheric music, which I'll talk about in a little while, environmental storytelling, and the unique characteristics of each boss. Even the boss arenas in this game are thoughtfully designed to complement the nature of the encounters, whether it's the vast and imposing chamber of Ornstein and Smough or the terrifying emptiness that arises from the abyss of the Four Kings. Each arena enhances the overall experience of the boss battle in some way, shape or form. Except yours, Capra Demon, you fucking bitch. The design of the arenas often factors into the strategic elements of the fight, adding an extra layer of complexity to the encounters. The environment itself plays a crucial aspect of the battle, influencing tactics and creating memorable moments, such as the vantage point in the battle against the Taurus demon, where you can do a plunging attack to deal significant damage to him, or the snow-filled spaces in the invisible Priscilla's arena, in which you need to make use of the footprints in the ground to outline where she lurks. I'll be honest though and admit that the arena's functionality does dwindle a fair bit when it comes to the second half of the game, which I'll also speak about soon. All of these features and aspects to the game's bosses and boss designs, as well as the meticulous attention to detail and their integration into the broader narrative and gameplay, make Dark Souls 1 an excellent example of how boss design can elevate a game into the realm of greatness. I wanted to dedicate a separate section to the music alone because wow, what a collection of songs this game manages to bless your ears with. It's not my favourite OST in the series, but it's still a magnanimous set to listen to. There's brilliance in any soundtrack, but Dark Souls 1's soundtrack in particular lies in its profound ability to enhance the player's emotional connection to the game's world. Composed by the legendary Motoi Sakuraba, the music serves as a dynamic and integral component to the overall experience, contributing significantly to the atmosphere, storytelling and emotional depth that the Dark Souls universe has to offer. The soundtrack shines in capturing the desolate and mysterious atmosphere of Lordran. The hauntingly beautiful compositions create a sonic landscape that mirrors the game's dark and enigmatic environment. This atmospheric resonance elevates the emotional impact of exploration, making every step through the decaying landscapes feel immersive and evocative. Pieces like Firelink Shrine establish a sense of melancholy and solitude, underscoring the player's journey through the interconnected and treacherous world. Hearing it after slugging your way through one of the game's long and savage levels early on creates a sense of warmth and safety that feels unmatched and invaluable throughout your journey in the rest of the game. The thematic diversity of the soundtrack is another key aspect of its charm and brilliance. Each area and boss encounter is accompanied by a unique musical theme that complements the narrative and aesthetic. For instance, the haunting choir and melancholic strings in Gwyn, Lord of Cinder's fight convey a tragic and somber nature of the final encounter, while the energetic and intense composition during the Ornstein and Smough battle adds urgency and adrenaline to the gameplay. The soundtrack's ability to adapt to different scenarios enhances the player's engagement and investment in the unfolding story. Furthermore, each piece plays a pivotal role in shaping the emotional tone of boss battles. The escalating tempo and crescendos during these fights heighten the stakes, mirroring the flow of battle. The memorable themes associated with bosses like Great Grey Wolf Sif, and the Iron Golem. Evoke a range of emotions, from sorrow and empathy to the chaotic thrill of combat. Such emotional resonance creates a long-lasting impact, turning boss battles into unforgettable and transformative experiences. Experiencing Northern Undead Asylum and its tutorial for the first time, only to be met with the blasting tune of the Asylum Demon mere minutes later, really hammers home the tone of the game right from the get-go and punctures you into getting used to the highly immersive setting. Comparatively, getting to the end of your very first Dark Souls playthrough and expecting this high-pass fight with blood-pumping music, only to be met with Gwyn and the was an extremely unforgettable and cathartic experience in any game for me, as it struck me in a more solemn tone that the journey was finally about to end, and I'm sure a lot of you share this memory too. Moreover, Dark Souls 1's soundtrack seamlessly integrates with the gameplay's minimalist approach to storytelling. The absence of traditional cutscenes or extensive dialogue places greater emphasis on emotional storytelling and the emotional cues provided by the music. The soundtrack becomes a narrative tool, conveying the lore and emotions of the world. A great example of this is the eerie yet calm track that plays only in Ash Lake. This considerably enhances the atmosphere of the area, communicating a noticeable sense of importance and historical value that defines the location. Pieces like these can evaluate the standings of an area, as it's more than just a musical score. In some cases, like with Ash Lake, it becomes a huge part of their identity to the grander world at large. I'll round off this section by saying this: DS1's soundtrack is brilliant due to its ability to create a deeply immersive and emotional experience within the player. The atmospheric compositions, thematic diversity, integration with gameplay, and narrative resonance make it all an integral part of the Dark Souls journey. Motoi Sakuraba's masterful work not only enhances the game's atmosphere, but also contributes to its long-lasting legacy, and even though he'll never see this, I'd like to thank him personally for creating such a thought-provoking and highly meaning set of music that'll last in the community for many, many decades. This video is mainly a celebration of the big things that makes Dark Souls 1 so bloody fantastic, but I did want to at least mention one part where it fell short on. So, second half of the game, why is it so shit, huh? I understand that the latter stages of the game got hit immensely with the negative effects of the time constraints that the development team were restricted to, and yeah, it shows. It's primarily just the levels and their design being far inferior to the first half of the game. The areas I'm talking about being New Londo Ruins, the Duke's Archives, Demon Ruins on the Lost Izalith, the Catacombs and Tomb of the Giants. They don't really evoke the same feeling of awe that so many at the start injected into your system, and they just slow down in gameplay and pacing, becoming more frustrating and tedious to get through. The bosses in these areas as well are some of the poorest in the game when viewed from a gameplay perspective. The only fights I found decent in this respect would be the Four Kings and the Fire Sage Demon, which is still a reskin of the Asylum Demon, so that in itself is a pretty low after all the praise I gave the bosses earlier. Bosses like the Centipede Demon are really not enjoyable to fight, as the arenas don't function well when it comes to the actual gameplay in the fight. Like, brother, it is not fun to fight this huge monster on one tiny patch of that larger arena. Gravelord Nito is another example of a conceptually cool fight with great lore, atmosphere and design, but why the hell are there so many ganking skeletons in the arena? It makes the fight so much more messy and tedious than it needs to be. The large skeletons at the back are even worse than Nito himself, so I always just have to restrict myself to the first bit of the arena when fighting him. Don't even get me started on you. There's a ton more that I could say about this game's second half, but this is ultimately meant to be a video on why I think Dark Souls 1 is a masterpiece, which even with the lacking periods later on, I still think it deserves that title. It just makes me feel a bit sad, reminiscing on how godly the game could have been if they had just the right amount of time needed to fully finish this game to the highest standards. And there you have it, fellow Souls enthusiasts. I tried my best to express my love about the main aspects that make this title a cultural gaming phenomenon. The intricate world design that seamlessly blends challenge with discovery, together with the haunting melodies that enrich the atmospheric experience, and the diverse roster of bosses that test our skill and determination, all culminate for a masterful experience in the gaming medium. These reasons are why Dark Souls 1 is still considered a masterpiece. I barely even scratched the DLC, as that's a whole other subject to discuss, and I wanted to talk about mainly my feelings and experiences with the base game, and honestly the DLC is so good that I can dedicate an entire separate video to it. But yeah, ladies and gents, if you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate it if you hit the thumbs up button, shared the video around, and even possibly subscribe to the channel, as I'd be forever grateful if you did so. Drop a comment on your thoughts on the video. Do you agree with the assessments I've given, or is there something that you disagree with? I'd be happy to discuss with you lot. Check out last week's video as we rank the Demon Souls bosses from worst to best. I've been Adobo, and I'll catch you lot in another video. Have a good day folks, and peace.